Okay, it's November 23rd, 7 p.m. Call the planning board meeting to order versus the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, on our agenda tonight, we have Studio A for Luzerne Woods, 17 lot subdivision. Is there somebody on Zoom for that?
From Studio A?
Yes.
Yes, there is. Whoever Studio A is, can you unmute yourself?
We're working on it, sorry.
We're unmuted.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay. We are here representing Luzerne Woods, the applicant. Eric Moses and Randy Belkin are also on the call here as well. So we are proposing a 17 lot subdivision. It's off of Sagamore Street and Milrose Lane. And then also down adjacent at the end is Camp Tech Road for your reference. In our submission materials, we have included two documents. We're really here for sketch plan review, just to get the board's initial thoughts and feedback on the proposed subdivision. The first drawing that we included is an existing conditions plan where we evaluated the topography of the parcels that are involved in the proposed subdivision. There also is a APA wetland on site. It has been flagged so that boundary is noted on the project map. And I think that's about it. The general site conditions, you know, it is sloping. There is wooded mature vegetation existing. It's all currently undeveloped land. So in our proposed concept plan, we're proposing clustering some of these lots. We are proposing one access point off of Sagamore Street to come down into the subdivision, and then also one off of Milrose Lane. We are proposing to connect those two up to access Sagamore Street again at the north end of the parcel. As you can see, we have a handful of lots in clustered areas, and it is due to topography. We place them strategically so we could get septic systems, and then also to follow the required zoning statistics. Let's see. Anything else you want to chime in on utilities?
Yeah, sure. This is Matt Huntington with Studio A. Additionally, the site is serviced by the existing municipal water supply. That's why you don't see any wells on there. We do recognize that an APA permit is going to be required for the subdivision just due to the fact that we're creating property lines within 200 feet of a wetland. So that will kind of continue as the project progresses here. But as Kirsten mentioned, we're really here at this point for a sketch plan to kind of get some feedback from the board, to hear your thoughts, and then address them as we progress with future submissions. We recognize this will be subject to a DEC permit for stormwater under the general permit for stormwater discharges from construction activities. We have some kind of preliminary areas shown on the plans right now near lots 10 and 11. Some easements will have to be written into deeds on those for stormwater access from the road. These lots themselves from the houses, we plan to handle most of that stormwater on site via site grading, possibly rain gardens, rooftop disconnection, etc. The stormwater management areas near the wetland, which is a low point on the site, are really designed to handle most of the roadway for the 110 and 100-year storm requirements. As Kirsten mentioned, all the sites have been preliminarily sized for on-site septic. And based on our site walkthrough when we were there, knowledge of adjacent areas, and what's kind of confirmed on the USDA soil survey, most of the soils in that area are pretty sandy. There's not really a high groundwater concern up there because you're up much higher than the lake in that area. So they lend themselves to on-site septic absorption fields pretty well. Obviously, as this progresses, we'll be doing individual test pits on the site for the septic designs, and coordinating with Department of Health, because this will end up being under the realty subdivision laws. So I mean, I think that kind of summarizes most of the regulations that we know we have ahead of us. And with that, maybe we'll turn it over to the board to see if you guys have any questions or comments.
Karen, I believe, isn't this a half an acre? You have to have
20,000 square feet for a lot in the Hamlet residential area. Is this Hamlet residential?
Yep, that's correct.
Yes.
So it's
Because there's town water available, they need 20,000 square feet for a lot. It's a little less than half an acre. Are you intending, this is Karen, the zoning officer, are you intending the roads to be town roads or private roads?
Right now, that's currently up for discussion with the applicant. I don't know if we've totally vetted that out yet at this point.
Okay,
Is that something that the town is interested in taking ownership of? I know in some areas, sometimes they, are not totally interested. I think the applicant may be, and feel free to speak up, Eric or Randy, if I'm saying something incorrect. But if they are designed to town standards, just for maintenance purposes, I think it might be, a simpler plan if the town's willing to take ownership of them.
That'd probably be something to go through the town board with.
Yeah, and want, the superintendent, highway superintendent to weigh in.
yeah, I don't know if you're hearing this, but you're saying the superintendent of highways should weigh in on that decision as well, and it would probably have to go to the town board for approval as well. I mean, you have to obviously have meets and bounds made for the road so that we knew exactly what the town would be acquiring as far as the road was concerned, but that can still be determined down the road. No pun intended.
Now the lots that have wetlands in them, is that still viable for them to fill in that property? I noticed, like you said, 11, 10, looks like 4. There's certain, those 3 for sure have wetlands in their property area.
Yeah, that may have been kind of confused with the boundary line. So the flagged wetlands are almost center there. We're not going to create any property lines through the wetlands. We just know we're going to have an APA permit because we're creating a property line within 200 feet of a wetland. So the only wetlands on site, they're kind of labeled in the center of the page on drawing L 1.10, and they're labeled as flagged wetlands. There's some other hatching around there, and that's kind of some adjacent stormwater management areas that we're preliminarily proposing near the wetlands.
Well, one thing I'm not familiar with, because I haven't dealt with this before, is the stormwater management. How does that work? I haven't been involved in something like this before. Master, sorry, the lawyer.
Yeah, Mike, sorry. No, that's right. I guess we'd want to, check out and when it comes time to review, keeping in mind slopes, changes in permeability, that's probably going to be looked at by the engineer. Make sure that everything is going to meet the town requirements for town code and for environmental and runoff aspects. But that's something that I want, like the town engineer to be able to weigh in and give an opinion on, in terms of if it's a concern or if what's being proposed adequately meets what would be necessary. And the goal is to prevent future problems.
Right.
So trying to prevent issues where there's standing water or a lot of runoff. And so, yeah, having an engineer take a look at it and review, it's going to give you the best opinion to make a determination.
I don't, Karen, we don't have an
The
engineer.
town
per se.
has an engineer, contract with an
Okay.
engineering firm, Cedar Woods, correct?
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah. So I want them obviously to review and provide comments.
So did you hear what we were talking about?
Yeah, this is Matt Hunting with Studio again. Yeah, we're not totally at the point for an engineering review yet. I mean, this will be substantially developed at that time with a full stormwater pollution prevention plan for the development, as well as all the design details related to it. Additionally, this will require coverage under the DEC's general permit for stormwater discharges. So they'll be receiving a notice of intent when it comes time for construction that shows that we meet all the state required stormwater management requirements for, green infrastructure, design storms, showing that we're not having any post-development stormwater volumes and runoff coming off the site at higher values than the existing that are going to cause any degradative conditions to the environment near there. So we're not quite at that point. We're just right now at the point where we're looking for, any feedback the board has, recognizing that all that will be developed as we go.
Karen, is there a certain road frontage for? Because 9 does not have any road frontage, neither does 6 or 7.
Okay, it's like a keyhole entry, which is common.
Okay.
Yeah. What happens is the measurement of the lot for setback purposes begins at wherever the lot becomes as wide as the requirement is. And I can tell you what that is. I believe that I had sent Studio A copy of the subdivision book and the ordinance, am I correct? Studio A?
Yes, I believe we have that. Right, is that the one? Yeah. Yes, we did get that.
Okay, so Hamlet Residential, the width of the lot is 100 feet.
But that doesn't start.
It-
But-
Like if you
That's
had a
what Tony's
keyhole
saying.
entry into that lot, the somewhere on that lot, it has to be 100 feet wide, and that's where the measurement begins.
but doesn't
They
it-
don't have the measurements on here, you have to use your scale and figure it out. Have you figured that all of these lots will have a minimum of 100 width on it, in it?
That's the minimum, and then some of them actually have a maximum of 210 feet.
Okay,
I understand what Tony was asking, because it's private, there's not really road frontage, but it's, you don't count it. She's talking about lot number 9. Right.
And then number 6 and 7 also.
They just have, right, they just have driveway, that's,
yeah,
I
that's
think,
Deeded right away.
typical to just have that driveway, but then you actually figure the rest of the lot.
okay, so it doesn't necessarily need 100 feet road frontage?
It isn't written road frontage, it's
Okay.
minimum lot width. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else has a question?
I'm just curious, I don't really know if you want to disclose it, but is your plan to develop these, build homes and then sell it as a a lot with a home on it, or is your plan to subdivide and sell the lots empty?
Josh, if you can get, see if you can take your mask.
Yeah, I think that was a question for Eric Moses on that, because we're not sure if that's been vetted yet. It looks like he may still be muted.
Who are you looking to get unmuted, Studio A?
Eric Moses, please.
Okay, Eric, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Eric Moses. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us tonight. That's a good question, and to be honest, we haven't determined whether we will sell these as lots or design build one or two of them. Our goal would be to partner with local builders if there was that opportunity to build something on spec, or if the best route was to sell them off as lots. We really haven't made that decision yet.
Were you planning on any type of lake access? Through Camp Tech Road, or?
Is this for Eric again, you're asking?
Yeah, just curious if he was planning on making these lake accessible.
Well, Randy and I actually, under the same LLC, own the beach at the end of Lake Tour Road. I'm sorry, Camp Tech Road. And we're in the process of, if you've ever been down there, several neighbors have easements to use that access to the water. And that beach, when we bought it, is in pretty bad disrepair, which hopefully by selling a lot or two on here, we can generate enough to fix up that beach, and intend to give these lot owners here access to the lake via the beach at the end of Camp Tech Road. So we wouldn't be adding necessarily any burden onto the public beaches. And while our beach at the end of Camp Tech Road is pretty underutilized, it should work out very well with helping to generate funds to fix up the retaining walls at the beach without having to do any sort of type of assessment or request any monies from the neighbors to help sustain the beach that everybody uses. That makes sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
The lots that are not going to have houses on them, or the land that's not gonna have houses on them, is that going to be like a homeowners association usage, or is it going to be open to the public?
Well, I wouldn't say it's open to the public necessarily, but none of it is technically open to the public right now. It's private property. Most of the area that's not shown as being in these lots are pretty extreme slopes. So whether it's still owned by the LLC or we make these lots bigger to have all the land covered by the 17 homeowners, I guess is still yet to be determined. Matt, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but
Yeah, I mean, it could really go either way, honestly. It just depends on, how the end game shakes out, whether it gets absorbed as part of the other lots or whether there's an opportunity, even though it's steep there. I mean, there's a potential you could put a couple like walking trails possibly or something like that in there that could be owned by the LLC. But again, that framework hasn't necessarily been established at this point in the design.
and we did see the opportunity for some walking trails so that in the top left of the property where there's not a lot, is the head of Camp Tech Road. So if there was a way for these houses to stay off the roads and to be able to pop out of the neighborhood right across the street from Camp Tech Road and walk down to the beach, that would be pretty nice. But there's nothing else slated or even considered to go on those areas because of the grade, just the nature of the grade.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what size houses you want to put in here? Is there going to be a square footage requirements or a set plan?
We had thrown around the idea of 2,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but that was just for kind of spitballing to see what kind of lot we needed around them, but we're not set on any size house at all. Just knowing who's in our neighborhood and then the nature of the people who live around there, that just seemed like a pretty appropriate layout.
Karen, do we know if the grade of the street is okay? I know there was some guidance on grades of new roads and subdivisions.
That's what I think the
Engineer.
attorney was getting involved, suggesting that the engineer look at it and check the ordinance and make sure that it is okay.
Am I under the impression that, or understanding that, that 200-foot wetland setback is not supposed to build on this?
Right.
Correct.
Why does the mobile property showing in that 200-foot wetland setback?
I think that I mistook that too. It's actually a proposed stormwater management area. It's not really a wetland.
Well, you're showing it as 200-foot wetland setback is the outer line all the way around.
Right, and that piece of property, there's no houses there.
Or what?
There's no houses in this area here.
Yeah.
But
No, he's talking about all the way around.
Oh, I thought it was just this flag.
So is that a variance he needs, Karen?
No, I believe you can build near wetlands, you just can't build on them. Am I correct with that?
Yes, correct. The 200-foot wetland setback is just there to indicate that we have property lines being created within 200 feet of that wetland, which triggers the APA permit. But we don't have any development within the wetland.
Yeah,
So he's good.
that's my understanding is that you can build right up to them. But you can't build on.
Okay, so the 200-foot wetland setback is.
That's what he's saying, the 200 feet setback of the wetlands is what triggers APA getting involved with it.
Okay.
Small.
So they get it, in that case, they, for those lots, if they sell those, they have to get APA approval.
Yeah, they may end up with jurisdiction over this whole thing, but yes.
Okay.
That will definitely trigger APA though.
So it looks like you have a little ways to go before we actually get this. They'll have to go in front of the board for the roads, the superintendent of roads, also the engineer, obviously the APA, DEC. And based on all those hurdles or approvals, then it would come back to us. But I mean, just looking at it, it looks like it could be viable based on getting a lot of people involved and getting the approvals.
I don't know, this is something that we need to get involved with or not, but these roads that are, I'm gonna say, going across other people's land and, you know.
I think that's all his land.
That's part
I think that's all his land. He's just gonna put a road through.
like if, well, I guess this is way too. I guess I'm wondering, you know, if there would be a maintenance issue.
You know, that's why he has to go in front of the town board
Right.
and sort of evaluate it, sure, must follow it.
He's talking about the right of way ones, these right here, the ones that would never be town. They're not big
Well,
enough.
I think that's a strict driveway.
Yeah, the right of ways, he's
Yeah,
asking
that's-
about those being the maintenance, sharing the maintenance of that or something like that.
I don't think,
And like this one, their own.
I don't think driveways we have to, do we? Like, for instance, Tony was saying, from, lot number 5, there's like a driveway that goes to lot number 6 and 7, that's private, that's really, the town would have nothing to do with that, correct?
That would be an easement probably.
Right, I mean, you can have, an opinion of, whether or not you like these flag lots in the subdivision where they're kind of stacked on top, or you prefer each lot to have its own road frontage. That's again, I think more of a preference. And the way that it would play out is just as Karen said, that would have to be created, there would be a right of way created over, say, lot 5 for lot 6 and 7.
But then who would determine the maintenance of that?
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
question.
and that would, again, either that's gonna be encompassed within HOA type of agreement, or it's gonna be between those lot owners to come to some sort of a
So it's something
agreement.
that we as
And
a-
it's something that you can discuss and you can take into consideration of, how are these, the lots that have multiple lots being accessible through one driveway. How's the rubber gonna meet the road on that, so to speak, in terms of, is there an HOA that's, again, taking care of some of this, or is that being laid out within the deeds for the properties, or is it just gonna be the neighbors are gonna have to fend for themselves and figure it out amongst themselves? It's certainly something that you can have the applicant weigh in on. It's not necessarily a requirement for the subdivision approval, but it's, if it's something that kind of piques your interest or causes a concern, it's something that you can have the applicant address.
Because I mean, the way, and especially the way 120 going out, right through lot 5. I mean, they have their own entrance, which isn't that driveway, but they're going right through their property to get to number 6 and 7. I mean, you have property on both sides of that road. Maybe I guess it would have to be something in the deed, or I don't know, because it could be a battle right there going down the road. I mean, if you own that property and you got somebody always constantly driving through it to the other 2 lots, which is what is created in this. Right? I don't know what they're gonna have to do to be able to
Typically,
sell that.
what they do with something like that is they have an easement written into their deed. And then they typically have some kind of a road maintenance agreement between the homeowners involved. Even if it's a homeowners association, it would be done through the homeowners association, but if it's privately owned land, then it's generally the road maintenance agreement is something that is usually attached to your deed. And you all are held to the same standard on the road maintenance agreement. At least that's how I've seen it.
Yeah, it's an issue. I mean, it's a concern because now you've got a number of different lot owners all sharing one, kind of piece of property, which is the driveway. And so, yeah, sometimes it's a separate parcel in and of itself that they are all joint tenants of. And sometimes it's a right of way that one property owner owns it, has one owner has title to it and the others have easements over it. But obviously it can be a point of contention.
Is that gonna have any effect, like if down the road we approve this? Do we have any responsibility
To maintain it.
or not maintain it, just, somebody come back on the planning board, say, well, you guys okay this road to go through this property? Because isn't that basically what we're doing?
I guess if you're saying when you have liability for the design, no.
Can we just ask why it's routed like that? I mean, is there the slope, is that the issue with the driveway? Is that why the driveway for lots 6 and 7 are shared and routed through lot 5? Does it have to do with the slope? Is that the issue?
Yeah, this is mounting a Studio A. It has to do with the slope and also has to do with the lot width requirements. Because you couldn't get a driveway into each of 6 and 7 and still meet the lot width requirements in order to get there. 3 driveways going through lot 5 is a little excessive to try to get there. We have done this in the past, and typically how it goes is it's just the access is written as an easement into the deed. So it's in the deed, it has to be respected. And typically we don't really have too many problems with that because it's written into the deed for each of these lots. So, lot 5 would have deeded access for 6 and 7, and then 6 would have deeded access to number 7. That way, if lot 5 gets angry with the other 2, they can't just plop a fence up there or something and prevent access to the house.
I'm assuming you kind of explored other options and this was kind of the best you came up with. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, that was an attempt to kind of maximize the density so we could get the additional 2 lots up there. And still be able to provide, lot width requirements, have septic on the lot, and, fit the house within the setbacks.
I guess, I'm thinking in the wintertime, okay, who pays for the plowing?
That's usually done on a road maintenance agreement, but it is a concern,
I guess,
right?
not as long as we don't have any responsibility for that, then whatever they work out. There's no problem.
It sounds like we don't. Right?
Right, yeah. You aren't responsible for the layout and design. You're approving it based on the ordinance, the town's ordinance, and if it meets the specifications. So, in terms of, if you would have, I guess the question is, would the planning board get sued because future owners are sharing an expense? That's not, I guess I would say that's not a concern.
Nor if the town decides to take the main section of the road over, they will not have to be responsible for that little section.
So if the town,
I guess
town roads, or if those roads are dedicated and the town takes them on as town highways, those driveways would not be town highways. They wouldn't be maintained by the highway department.
Now, is Milrose Lane, is that a trail now, or is it a dirt road, or what is that now?
I don't know, I would have to ask. the
I drove up
highway superintendent.
It's a dirt road. I drove up Melrose Lane and actually it's cleared very well into the property that they're talking
So
about.
that's a dirt road, and
So obviously the town doesn't take care of it now. But
Is-
I don't know.
Is Milrose, maybe Mr. Moses knows this, or Studio A, is Milrose Lane a private road or a town road at this point?
I think Eric has to be unmuted still, Eric Moses, to chime in on that. He may know the answer on ownership.
As far as I know, Milrose is a town road.
I can ask the highway superintendent.
Only reason I ask if it's dirt, you've been up there. I didn't think we plowed dirt roads, but.
I don't know, I'll have to ask.
I think maybe another question is, I mean, is Milrose meeting the requirements for width in 2 lanes? Because it's going to see a lot more traffic now than it ever has.
right, and if the town maintains it to plow, it's gonna have to, is it gonna cost the town money to upgrade
Right.
Milrose Lane to the subdivision road so that it can be plowed and maintained? with the subdivision.
What they might do now is push the snow in and that's it. That's the end of it.
Well, I'll have to ask the highway superintendent.
Because on the other roads, the property go right to the main roads. Except for that one. And especially during the winter to maintain, they're gonna wanna plow straight through, they're not gonna wanna stop it. It's gonna have to be up.
Did you? Okay.
I mean, I don't know about that. They're down there.
Maybe once.
Smith Mountain Road is also.
I just said it. Barb, you have any questions?
Chris, Andrew will go.
So glad you presented this to us. There's still a lot of questions that the town board, the road superintendent, and APA has to answer. So at this point, appreciate you bringing it in front of us. I mean, it looks like it could be something that would work as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure about the rest of the board, but do you have any questions for us?
Not in particularly. I mean, the whole intent that we were here was just to get, any feedback that the board had so we could address that as we're progressing in these other applications with the APA. And it sounds like mainly some of the things are just possibly to vet town road ownership, if that's something that the applicant's interested in. We could vet that out with the town board, and then, the next steps are, as we know, to progress with realty subdivision, DEC permit and APA permit for the development. So, provided the board doesn't have any additional asks at this point, our plan is to progress with that and come back with a much more substantive package for the next meeting that we're on.
I just thought of one thing. Is that town water?
Yes, that, I was just gonna bring that up. That is town water in that area, and it's my understanding that it's going to be, the cost of hooking into the water and running all of that line is at the landowner's expense. You're aware of that, correct?
Yeah, I believe Mr. Moses is aware of that. I mean, that's a typical procedure for most subdivisions, so that's what we would have anticipated.
Okay. If you have questions about the water or anything like that, you could check with the highway superintendent. I believe that he is the point of contact for that. And that's Ron Dool here at the town, is the highway superintendent.
Yeah, I've met Ron. So just in case you don't know, I live on Camp Tech Road. So I'm in the neighborhood. So I'm just not somebody coming in trying to develop land in Lake Luzerne, but I live 2 houses down from this land.
The other issue that might happen too is that, for town water, would they run a main on private property to feed houses? So thinking that maybe if they want the main down through there, that the town would have to approve the road too, so that they could, I don't know if they've done that in the past, but like, it would surprise me that we would run a main down a private road.
Well, they would need, if they would have to have as a minimum, at least an easement for the main water lines to go in there. They would have to have some kind of easement so that they can service them, etc. The other thing that I'm not seeing on here are fire hydrants. Have you addressed that issue yet?
Again, the water system hasn't been totally designed for this. Like we said, we're in here for, feedback on the overall layout or any things that the board wanted addressed at this point in time. certainly there'll be hydrant spaced at, approximately 500 feet in accordance with town and state standards throughout the roadway. And as you mentioned, if the town doesn't or is not interested in taking ownership of the road, there'd be at a minimum maintenance agreement for the water line that goes through.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I have one more question. Are you planning for year round or are you gonna accept camps for seasonal use? Or are they all gonna be year round houses?
I didn't hear you. Are they gonna be camps?
Are you gonna, because of where they're located, camps are year round?
I think they should all, have the opportunity to have 4-season houses if that works out. It's not being built, or our concept right now in the early phases is not to shut this neighborhood off in the winter, but to have access 4 seasons. Well, we really haven't gotten down that road yet. Why do you ask? I mean, the roads should be plowed. I think the plan is to plow the roads, whether it's town or private.
Just because of the location and there are so many seasonal homes in that area.
Right.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah, mine's seasonal and I wish it wasn't.
you have the opportunity to build on your own property.
Right, now, exactly, I can build the house that I want.
Okay, so it looks like we'll wait for some more feedback from you guys. You have a lot to do before you come back to us, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, and-
Happy holidays to you all.
Yeah, thank you for the time.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
Thanks, good night.
We don't have any minutes tonight, right? It's,
No.
already done.
I have a couple of things.
Yeah.
All right. You want me to just jump in with them?
Yes.
Hey, John, are you taking public comment tonight because the people had their hands up, or is it?
We don't take public comments under the public hearing.
Okay.
Mike, is that correct? So as far as our board, the only time we ever take public comments unless it's the applicant is for a public hearing.
Yeah, you're not, you don't have any obligation for public hearing just on the sketch plan review. If you wanted comments, you're not prevented from getting feedback, but there's no hearing requirement for a sketch plan review.
I just, Mike said there were some people that wanted questions, I guess. As far as I know, we've never taken questions before.
Right. When you're required to have the public hearing, when you have the application in front of you for approval.
Right.
That's what triggers a public hearing section, and so this is more or less just informational.
Right.
And so that, yeah, there's no public comment portion that's required for your review tonight.
Okay.
I had sent out in October an email to all of you with training requirements. You're expected to get 4 hours worth of training each calendar year. Tony indicated that she doesn't think she received hers. Have the rest of you gotten it?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully by year end, you will be able to provide me with some kind of proof that you've taken 4 hours, okay? And the other thing that I wanted to discuss is we haven't had a meeting last month, so I wasn't able to discuss this with you, but it was brought up by Councilman Paul Lewandowski that he thinks that there should be some kind of a penalty in place for people that build without permits, without getting permits, or if they're required to have like site plan reviews or variances or something, and they just go ahead and build. No, there's no penalty basically for someone that does that. They're just then required to get the permit, go on to the county. The county does have a penalty in place for people that, for what they call an after the fact permit. And so he was discussing that with me and I brought it up. We discussed it at the town board meeting. They asked to have input from the zoning board, and because you are the board that really sets the standards, I guess is what I want to say, for the town as far as living and how it affects people and the quality of life, I felt it was prudent to bring it to your attention and let you know what this discussion has been. In discussing it at the zoning board, a lot of the members felt that we should not just jump in right away with a penalty, that we should do some education first, of which part of the discussion was to put up signs at the main road entrances into the town that it's a zone community and building permits are required, because that does not exist right now. They also felt that after that was done, that we should wait a period. At first, they were talking 6 months, but then they agreed that they felt we should, 1 minute, give it a period of 12 months, a period of 12 months after the signs had been put up, and then revisit the whole discussion about possibly having a penalty in place for people that do things without permits. There was discussion about the amount of money that might be involved. I was asked to contact other towns and see what was in place at other towns, which I did. And basically in Warren County, Bolton, they don't do an after the fact penalty. Chestertown has a $100 after the fact surcharge. Hague has a $150 after the fact surcharge. Horicon is the same as Hague. Johnsburg has no penalty. Town of Lake George and the Village of Lake George is the same, $150 after the fact fee, and that includes site plan review and variances. But they're discussing, Lake George is discussing adding an additional fine as well as this fee. They also they allow the applicant to go in front of the town board and plead their case and try to get the fee, the fine, not fine, but the after the fact fee waived in some cases. But it also can work in reverse, that the town may feel that they can charge them more than what the set fee is. So Queensberry, they have no monetary penalty. The only thing that they do is they set, everything is done by site plan review at Queensberry. And so they set a special portion of the meeting aside for anything that is an after the fact thing. So it's kind of a slap on the wrist that you get put into this category more, but there's no monetary fee involved. Stony Creek has no zoning, Thurman has no zoning, and Warrensburg has no penalty. So that's what I found out there. And again, there was a lot of discussion about setting like steps in the penalty fees, or one flat fee, or different fees for different things. There was discussion as to whether you would, the homeowner was responsible for this after the fact fee, or the contractor, if the contractor went ahead. And in that discussion, basically, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Crow, but it was basically, it comes down to it's the homeowner's responsibility to get these permits. And then if the homeowner felt that they had maybe been led astray by the contractor or something, then it would become kind of a civil action between the contractor and the homeowner about if this fee got, if they ended up having to pay this fee. Now, what the county does is if they know that something has been built without a permit, what they do now is they charge twice the amount of the permit fee, and their permit fee is based on many different things, sometimes by square footage, sometimes by value of construction, sometimes it's just a minimum fee. If it's a minimum fee, they never have less than a $100 after the fact additional fee to the permit. So that there is something at the county, but the problem is that not every permit is required to go to the county. Sign permits, fence permits, septic permits are only here at the town level, and they don't go on to the county for those permits. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on what this discussion has been. And again, at the end of the last zoning meeting, the agreement was that I would report to the board that they felt that we should move forward with putting up these signs and then wait 1 year and then revisit this, and at that point, put in place some kind of a penalty. So I don't know what your thoughts are as a board or individually, but that's what the discussion has been. I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at you without you having any background to this, but.
Are they focusing primarily on structures? A permit to have a.
No, it would be anything like I said, people put up fences, swimming pools. The things that I see around town in the last month, for whatever reason, I've come across 2 septic repairs that are being done with no permits. I've got a 3-bay garage that has gone up with no permit. I have a storage building on another parcel, and I have 2 storage buildings on another parcel that I've just come across in the last couple of weeks. Part of why this has come up is that the assessor's office is trying to go around and update their files on what are on people's properties. And in doing that, they're finding things on the properties that have not been covered by permits that were not there the last time they were checked. So it's becoming quite obvious that things are being done with no permits. One of the things that I see a lot of are swimming pools. And it's really the state uniform code, which is governed by the Warren County Building Codes Office, that has the jurisdiction over it. But that was one of the things that we discussed, is that almost all pools now require a permit. I think again, I haven't checked with the Building Codes Office, but I think it's only anything less than 18 inches does not require a permit, but anything over an 18-inch pool requires a permit. And there are a lot of these pools that you buy like at Walmart and Target and that go up that have no permit. And, people were a bit shocked that these small pools do require permits, but as I pointed out to them, having worked in the Building Codes Office, you have to look at why the permits are required. It's because for pools in particular, history has shown that people die from these pools. There's children deaths, and what they're trying to do is to make sure that people put in the alarms. That's what they're they put up the required fencing around these pools so kids can't climb over and climb in when no one's home, or that there are floating alarms in them so that if the water gets disturbed, they go off, and it's it's a life-saving thing. You have to look at why these things are in place, not so much that it's an inconvenience as homeowners to have to get these permits, but there's a reason for a lot of it. So anyway, that was a lot of the discussion. So I don't know if you have any feedback that you wanted.
Can it be denied?
Pardon?
Can it be denied?
Can what be denied?
With the institution of getting a permit, can a permit, somebody applies for permit to say build a pool, can that be denied to them, like, no, you can't have a permit to do this.
If they don't meet the setbacks, which there are setbacks for pools, then yes, I would.
All right,
yeah.
I'm just using that as an example, but, yeah. So in doing the permit, then there's other things that
Yeah,
follow suit.
some of the things that have happened is that, when people have not gotten permits, and this is gonna be the case with this 3-bay garage and these 3 storage buildings that I found recently, they've all got to come and get variances as well as permits eventually. So,
And if there was a reason, we'll say that they were in violation of a setback or whatever, the setback was so intrusive that they were denied even the setback, would they be forced to take the building down?
if the zoning board of appeals denied them a variance, eventually they would have to remove the building. It might end up in court, but yes, that is a possibility.
Now, as far as the signs, that's gonna be an expense to the town. Is that in order to implement this, I'm gonna call it a fine, for lack of the right word, to be implemented, is that a requirement to put those signs out?
No, that is just something that they came up with to educate people that permits are required, because there's nothing out there. We talked about putting it on the website. We talked about, I guess they're using Facebook and other social platforms, putting it out on those as well. The signs was just a physical thing that people driving into town, people that didn't live here, summer people coming in would be able to see. And at least we could then say, well, it's posted, you've got to have seen the signs coming into town. Right now, someone might have a very good argument. Well, there's nothing telling me that I have to have a permit,
How about a mailing or something with the tax bill?
We talked about that. There are only certain things that you're allowed to put in your tax bills. If we wanted to do a mailing, it would have to be a separate mailing, I understand. And, possibly like a postcard mailing but I mean, it certainly could be done, but it has to be approved through the county to go in with any kind of, with the tax bills. And they're very limited as to what they're allowed to put in with the tax bills.
Would this be something that would have a public hearing, or be public input?
If
In
we,
any way?
if we instituted some kind of a penalty, yes, it would have to be done under probably a local law, correct?
Yep.
Yes, so yes, there would be a public hearing.
I just think, over the years, you see a guy come in that, the one guy moved his roof 2 feet, didn't think anything of it. He had to come in back in and present to us. I hate to hit that guy with a $250 fine for something so minor. It was almost ridiculous that he had to come before us, so I think there needs to be a lot of discretion. Then you kind of run into the issue of fairness. Well, they didn't find this guy, but find this guy. I'm sure the town board doesn't want, to hear the complaints about fairness with the fines, and it just seems like it could get kind of complicated, but, for the guy that, builds his fence a foot, to the right, and gets hit with a $250 fine, just might lead to a lot of bickering.
Well, in a situation like that, if he was, let's say, grandfathered in before any permits or anything were required, but once there's a requirement to have a permit, well, then you don't really have an excuse. It's like you should have gotten a permit, which would have determined X, Y, and Z. Prior to that, who knew? It's like you kind of you've got to have some kind of a grandfather clause in there for people like with that scenario you described, where somebody like with their fence or their roof or something, it's already done and there was no permit requirement in place at the time. So,
Or
Well-
there was no fine.
or there's no, yeah,
You can't go back and find them after the fact.
yeah. Because there was nothing in place, but once it's in place, then the onus is on the landowner, right?
Well, I think that was part of why they said to, try to make it visible, post it either by road signs, putting it on the website or whatever, and then give it a period of time
Yeah.
so that people saw it, you try to educate people and then go forward from there. You know,
Could you do a newspaper thing too, like a series of, I mean, is that a possibility? Like the Chronicle or the Post Star or things like that, or, you know,
We need to educate the residents.
that was
That's
the
the
whole
biggest-
point, was educating, yes.
yeah,
We need to educate them,
and give a period of time.
but then the fines will be at the discretion of the board when they're presented.
I don't know if they were thinking of defined discretion of the board, or if it was if I found something, or the zoning officer, whoever that person is at the time, found something built and no permit had been issued, then you would just have it like on a fee schedule, that after the fact charge is X number of dollars regardless. So,
What if it was like a blatant violation of, like your pool thing?
I mean, it just seems like there's a big difference between somebody buying a Walmart pool and throwing it up in their backyard versus the guy building a 3-bay garage.
mhm.
You're hitting them both with $250 fines. You know, it just seems.
They just want to get their.
Well,
a little steep
that,
to me, but-
this is the kind of discussion that we need to have though. You know, if you feel there should be some way, we had talked about that of doing like a grade of fee rather than one flat fee for everything.
Or if there's multiple violations.
Correct.
Yeah, if you're building something and you're supposed to get inspections for each step along the way and you don't have anything, that's different. I mean, you basically built it and you didn't care and you're gonna ask for forgiveness after the fact. You know, where you put a pool up in your yard to cool the kids down because it's 100 degrees out, you go to Walmart on a Saturday, you wanna blow it up and let the kids go swimming. Now you're gonna be hit with a fee because the town's not open till Monday, but yet your kids are dying. So, I'm sorry, I'd blow up the pool and fill it with water. But that's, you know.
Yeah.
There's different variances. But like with a 3-bay garage, you know, they had to pour concrete, they had to build it, they put electrical, you know,
Apples and oranges.
there's a lot
It
of
was
stuff to
deliberate.
it, right?
Okay. So how do you feel about posting it on the roads though for now as the first step? And then putting it on the website and possibly like Facebook or any of the other social media platforms that are being used?
You're talking about just the main roads or?
Yeah, it would just be the main roads that come into town from other towns.
So like.
So like 9N from Lake George, East River Drive from Corinth, the road from Hadley into Luzerne over the bridge.
It's not due.
There's not that many really.
You just have mountain road.
Yeah, up on the mountain road, Call Street.
Just for my own education, Karen, if a property exchanges hands, at that point, is the onus on the new property owner to know that permits were in place when they purchased the property? I mean, we have some houses in our neighborhood that have sold that there's definitely been some changes to, and the buyers definitely had no idea, you know, those were unpermitted, whatever sheds or,
Good question.
Yeah.
so I guess, I'm just curious for my own.
Good point.
That's a very good question.
That is a good question. I don't know how to establish throughout the whole town what is here right now and what is not, you know, but that's kind of what the assessor's office is trying to do, but it's gonna have to be done in stages. They don't have the manpower to go out and do all of the properties in town. I think if you saw the files in my office for all of the parcels, there's a lot of them, but,
I'll make the motion.
usually when someone buys a property, unless it's a cash sale, typically banks are calling and asking for copies of certificate of occupancies and things like that. And if they're not, you know, if they've gotten a permit and it hasn't been closed out, in most cases, they make the present owner finish out that permit if the project is done before they, you know, have a closing, but that does not happen on properties that are sold for cash. A lot of times they don't do that search, they don't, you know. So it's a hit and miss. It's kind of buyer beware, honestly, unfortunately, but that's what it turns out to be a lot of times. So, you know, maybe the idea that someone has the right to come in front of the town board and plead their case is not a bad idea for situations just as that you're bringing up. You know, they would be able to prove they bought it at such and such a date and that building was there beforehand or whatever. Then they would, I would say they would have a pretty good case of pleading their, you know, their cause at that point. But it's a good point that you brought up.
I just signed a contract to buy a second house, right? And in the contract, my lawyer made a stipulation for the seller to affirm that everything was on that property was properly permitted and zoned and all that stuff, and they have to sign that document, and if it's not, then it's gonna go back on them. So that's just something I saw today, so it kind of fits right into what we were talking about. They added that whole column right into the contract that the seller had to sign something to say everything on that property is legit, and if it isn't, it goes back on them at some point in time.
That's good to know. I don't think we need to have a motion. Just kind of let me know, how do you feel? Well, let me ask each of you, how do you feel about posting signs and putting it on the webpage and social media? Let's start with Bud.
I'd agree with that. You know, I have seen it in other communities. And, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't know how many people really notice the sign, but I think it would be a good start.
Barb?
Before I answer that, just a question about how many of us here are in favor of doing like this permit thing? Do we think it's a good idea, a bad idea? Is it already out there that it's gonna happen and we just need to?
It's not out there that it's gonna happen.
No.
It would have to go in front, it would be a local law. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be something that the town board would have to put out for the public to hear and have comment on and then vote on it.
Is it going to be something that's going to cause you a lot more work?
Well, that's what my job is, whether it's too much work or not. I mean, they're talking about hiring someone in the coming year to assist me, especially on the violations and complaints. There's gonna be a deputy zoning officer. So, you know, the workload should not really come into play on it. It's work that I should be doing. I just unfortunately don't have the time right now to do it all. I mean, I've got a couple on my desk right now that I should be looking at and I haven't looked at yet.
And the whole purpose is, with any of the communities, but especially ours, since we're possibly going to institute this or will institute it, is as a protective measure for our community. It's to protect.
Building permits are required because buildings have fallen down. People have gotten hurt when decks collapse because they're not built to the right loads that they hold. People have drowned in pools because they don't have the right alarms. People, you know, have drowned in pools because they don't have the correct fences around them so that people can't get in them when the homeowners are not there. Yeah, electric things, wood stoves, fires from wood stoves that are improperly installed. You know, snow load things for the area. If you don't build a roof to the right snow load, they will collapse.
Right.
I mean, that's why these are in place. They're not just in place to be getting fees from people. They're there because history has shown that there have been problems with the way things are done, shoddy, shoddy workmanship by contractors or homeowners that go in and do something that they don't know what they're doing and it's done wrong. And that's the reason that those things are in place now.
Okay. It's not necessarily, it's not meant to be punitive, it's meant to be reconstructive.
Correct.
So do they enforce $150 fine in Lake George if somebody has a kiddie pool in their yard?
I don't know. I just called and asked if they had an after
Obviously,
fact penalty.
Build a garage on place, you would think that would warrant a fine of some sort, but I mean, I don't know exactly what's in their code as far as their swimming pools or whatnot, but
Mhm.
go back to what Josh talked about earlier, I'm gonna buy the pool from Walmart.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to it than just a sign, I guess.
Or, I mean, can they set, if the estimate is over $10,000 as a fee? I mean, there's just not enough clarity that I would want to hit some poor family. We have a lot of, low income people around here and we just start throwing out $250 fines. I don't know that, I think people come to this community because it's a small town community. People are reasonable with stuff like this. And, that's why people don't live in Queens, but live in Lake Luzerne because there's some level of, neighborliness and,
Mhm.
Or
uh,
maybe it's a graded
So-
type of thing,
yeah.
I mean, that I think is yet to come. I think that has to be determined, right?
Yeah.
But as far as advertising, I like the idea of the sign. Don't know how much people pay attention to those, but I think, definitely like newspaper and social media and, where it's there and people can read it, see it, and it's there like on a consistent basis. Our website, all of that. Yeah, I think that those are all great ideas to inform people, like this is coming.
I mean, even if they don't put a penalty in place, I think it's a good idea to at least put it out there that permits are required.
Right, yeah, I mean, that can't hurt.
What, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, for more road signs, but,
But on the rest, you think if we come to a penalty, it should be looked at a lot further?
I just think there's a lot of issues that you could run into with it. I mean, I think we already have issues with, we have a lot of laws on the books now that aren't enforced. So to get into another, thing that we have to enforce and pick and choose who gets fined, who doesn't get fined, I think it just may lead to, more conflict and, I mean, just take a trailer park, for example. I don't think any of the trailers will set tongues on and stuff like that, We dealt with the RV issues, the boat issues. I mean, a lot of that stuff isn't enforced as it is. So to come up with another thing that you have to enforce, that you have people, write to the newspapers about, well, this guy got fined, I didn't get fined, it causes conflict with neighbors.
Mhm.
My opinion, maybe I'm in the minority, but.
No.
No, I agree. You mentioned that you've to the board just recently, but is that an unusual?
No, quite honestly, if you drive, there are a lot of violations out there that I'm gonna say probably the most common ones are these small pools, fences, possibly small storage buildings. Those are the ones that driving around I see. And I haven't addressed them all. I honestly haven't, I don't have the time to sit and write all those violation letters right now. I only work 20 hours a week and I don't mean to plead my cause here. It is my job. I should be doing it, but I don't have the time to do all of that right now. But there are quite a few things that I see that need permits that people just don't get permits for.
But then people can go to Lowe's and buy fence and do it over the weekend.
Mhm.
You know, that, okay, I got this weekend off, it's gonna be beautiful. I'm gonna go buy some fencing or buy a storage shed, and you might not even realize they need a permit.
Mhm.
Karen, do you want to switch to, I'm going to switch to this because we're going to be almost out of
I
time.
think we're almost done, I think.
Got about 3 or 4 minutes left.
Okay, let me just go, Kyle, how do you feel about the signs and the,
I think
social-
sign's a good idea.
John?
Yeah, I think it's a good start anyway. After that, I think the town's gonna have to have, public hearings and really listen to what the public wants to. Maybe we'll do it with no fines, maybe we'll have.
I definitely think we should put the signs up. I'm very uncomfortable with the fines at this point because there are just too many variables.
Okay,
And it's going to be, the safety of our community has to come first. So we need to educate everybody on what they need permits for and why they need permits for the safety
okay.
issues. If we just start saying we're gonna start finding people, they're not even gonna listen to where we're going with the safety issues and protecting them. They're just gonna be jumping right on the money.
Yeah, I hear you.
I just think we need to approach it differently than just say money
Okay,
fines.
that's all I have.
Anybody else have anything? Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.